It is the biggest earthquake to hit Japan since instrument records began, and now the tsunami wreaks havoc across big parts of the country. Hundreds of people are dead. This is World Have Your Say. Welcome, I'm Peter Dobby. Hundreds of thousands are said to be on the streets of Japan right now. There are aftershocks. Cars, buildings, ships washed away on a wall of water and sludge. This is World Have Your Say. Now we'll talk with some of you in just a moment in Tokyo, Yokohama and Honolulu in just a second. First, the main developments this hour. You just knew this was the big one. That was a comment from one resident of Tokyo talking to the BBC today, describing the 8.9 magnitude quake that hit at 2:45 in the afternoon. The tsunami warning now extends across the entire Pacific region. And there are real fears that the wave, or waves, could be higher than some of the islands in its path. Mike Wooldridge now with the very latest.
The tsunami triggered by the earthquake sweeping towards land from the epicenter, about to wreak havoc along the coastline. It's now being described as the biggest earthquake in magnitude ever to hit Japan. In the tsunami's destructive path, cars, boats, even buildings, some on fire, debris of all kinds. The waves of muddy water broke over embankments, taking everything with them. And then they went into reverse, sweeping debris back out towards the sea. Here a boat in a harbour finds itself tossed about in a whirlpool created by the earthquake. The moment the earthquake struck, 2:46 in the afternoon, local time in Japan. This is the local government office in the city of Sendai. This the offices of Japan's public broadcaster in the same city. In this supermarket, staff even try in vain to prevent items falling off the shelves. There were several powerful aftershocks within the hour. In a country all too used to earthquakes, the shock at the magnitude of this one all too obvious as people spilled out onto the streets of Japan's cities and tried to comfort one another.
Walking into the office from the balcony from a phone call, and somebody said quake, then it really kicked in big time. And we didn't wait around too long before we all headed for the stairs and out of the building.
We're on the third floor, so we felt quite a big shake, and then everybody was evacuated. And I work in the downtown area of the city, so most people were evacuated and just on the streets, and all the electricity and gas and water have been turned off.
An oil refinery burns out of control just outside the capital. Other refineries have been shut down. Countless fires have been triggered by the earthquake. As yet, no one's even begun to assess the economic cost of the disaster.
I offer my deepest sympathy to the people who have suffered the disaster. Regarding our nuclear power facilities, some of the nuclear power plants have stopped automatically, but so far, no radioactive material or radiation has been confirmed to have been leaked to the outside. An emergency disaster response headquarters has been set up with myself as the head.
The Prime Minister was in Parliament when the earthquake struck. Reports say power was disrupted to more than 4 million buildings in Tokyo and its suburbs. Transport has been severely disrupted too. This was the airport in Sendai as it became inundated. Flights have been halted elsewhere, trains too. Military planes were scrambled to help in assessing the damage. As the wall of water surged across the countryside, the authorities warned people to leave low-lying areas. For these people, it all happened too quickly. For now, a country with some of the most advanced measures in the world for coping with earthquakes is still trying to take in the scale of a disaster that's still unfolding.
tsunamis occur repeatedly, so please continue to remain in your evacuation venues. And for areas where the tsunamis have not yet arrived, there is a likelihood that very large tsunamis may occur, so please be very careful.
The authorities say it's already clear that the earthquake has caused major damage across broad areas of northern Japan. And amid the rubble and the deepening sludge, the death toll continues rising. Mike Wooldridge, BBC News.
You're with World Have Your Say, of course. Send us an email, worldhaveyoursay@bbc.com, or post a comment or a question on the blog, worldhaveyoursay.com. Now let's talk to Yukiko, who's on the line from Tokyo. Yukiko, take us through your experiences of this.
It was my day off work, and I was sitting in my sitting room when the quake occurred. And at first I thought it was one of those moderate quakes we have from time to time, but then it began shaking very violently, and I could hardly stand up. And I turned on TV, and TV was already showing the flash news that there was a big quake in Tohoku region, the northeastern region of Japan. And then I went out of the building, and lots of neighbors did the same, and we kind of huddled together for a while. And then I went back home, but there's many aftershocks every few minutes, and it's very scary. And I can say that was the biggest quake I've felt in my life.
That seems to be a constant here. People are saying this is the big one.
Yeah. As far as I know, I don't know the Kobe quake or, the Great Tokyo Kanto earthquake. So, it's the biggest that I've felt in my life.
Were people panicking at that point?
I don't know. Since I was alone in my house, I haven't heard people screaming or doing anything. And fortunately, nothing fell down from shelves in my house. But my neighbor told me, and then in her house, toys and books have fallen down from shelves. And some people said, there's some small furniture fallen down. But we're in Tokyo, and 400 kilometers away from the epicenter, so it's kind of really traumatic to think, what it was like nearer to the center of the quake.
Do you have power, light, water in your apartment now?
Yes, I do. Okay. Sometimes telephone lines are busy, but apart from that, I'm fine with all the... Yeah.
What do you do now?
Well, watch the TV. Yeah. The TV is showing, all the channels are showing quake coverage all day long. So because there's so many aftershocks, and there are reports of big fires, and then tsunamis from northern Japan, and it's really devastating.
Okay, Yukiko, thank you very much for sharing your experiences of this earthquake and the tsunami that followed it with us here on World Have Your Say. Let's talk to Eddie. He's on Skype. Eddie, what happened to you?
Well, I was at the train station. I was just coming home from work, and I'm about 30 minutes outside of Tokyo. And I was listening to my iPhone, and when there's an earthquake, if you're indoors, you tend to feel it, and if you're higher up, you feel it, but outside, you usually don't feel it. I look next to me, and this young schoolgirl has a strange look on her face. So I take off my headphones, and I suddenly I realize that just something's not right. And then I realize, there's a little earthquake, and then it starts to intensify. And normally, when you're outside, you don't feel it. And so when you can feel it, you realize, it's a little bigger than it seems. Suddenly, I hear rumbling. And it gets more and more intense, and I'm like, okay, when's it going to stop? Because whenever there's an earthquake, you think, is this the big one? And it never is. And suddenly, there's a 7-story building in front of the station. It's like a shopping mall. The thing is bobbing up and down. I'm not sure if it was the platform that was moving or the building, but that building, and then the skyline is moving up and down. And the rumbling isn't particularly loud, and I'm not being thrown about. But here's the strangest thing. How would you think all the people on the platform would be reacting? How would you guess?
Running for cover?
No, tweeting, Facebook. They all have out their cell phones and portable devices, and they're all checking their devices. And so I did the same thing with my iPhone, and everyone's tweeting, "There's an earthquake. Did you feel that? Boy, the ground's sure shaking." And I'm looking around. The world is coming to an end, and people are just all checking their cell phones, and there was no panic whatsoever. I might have heard a gasp, like as it went on. It was obvious that at one point it was obvious this is really serious. And I think just when people got to the point where they would have reacted, it kind of tapered off. But there was no panic. They cleared out the train station. While it was happening, the guy on the loudspeaker made an announcement in Japanese, "We're having a big earthquake," but that's really helpful. It doesn't give you much advice what to do. And then there was an aftershock. It felt like maybe it was a couple minutes later, and the guy said, "We're having another big earthquake," which is pretty useless to know. And then they just evacuated the station, and the trains have not been running since. But no panic, no hysteria, no screaming. It wasn't like in the movies.
Okay, Eddie, for the moment, do stay with us, but thanks very much for taking us through. I suppose what we're talking about now is the mood in the country. We're going to talk now to our World Affairs correspondent, Caroline Hawley. Caroline, as we were talking to Eddie there, seeing those amazing pictures of buildings, entire blocks of buildings on fire.
That's right, and the full scale of the horror of this earthquake has been unleashed, of course, on the northeast of the country. We have reports now of a train missing. We don't know how many people were on board, but that was, again, in that coastal region that's been hardest hit. We've been reporting earlier the ship with about 100 people on it that was swept away. Again, the people there unaccounted for. Police in Sendai City, which is the city nearest to the epicenter of the quake, talking about 200 to 300 bodies being found on the coast. Then, of course, we've had reports of a major explosion at a petrochemical complex in Sendai, and now reports of a fire raging across a large waterfront area in a town again near Sendai City. A major rescue operation going on, the military trying to assess the full scale of the damage, but the death toll rising all the time.
Caroline, for the moment, thanks very much. Caroline Hawley, our World Affairs correspondent there, of course. This story is still literally moving as the tsunami wave goes from west to east. You're getting in contact with us here at World Have Your Say. Drop us a text on +44 7786 20 60 80. You're getting in contact, you're watching us, you're listening to us in India, Somalia, here in the UK, in the States, in Saudi Arabia, in the United Arab Emirates, in Algeria, Canada, Ghana, Nigeria, Bangladesh, Libya, Morocco, and New Zealand. Mark was on holiday in Tokyo. Mark, what happened to you?
How are you doing?
Very well. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm okay. I'm sort of staying up, basically. I don't think I want to go to bed, really.
I can understand the adrenaline must be pumping, but if you can, just go back a few hours and share with us what happened to you and your family.
Okay, I was with my wife, staying in sort of central Tokyo, a place called Roppongi Hills. I was having an afternoon kip, and I sort of awoke feeling like maybe there's a strong gust of wind on the window, because I could hear sort of the window creaking, and then I realised that actually the whole room was shaking, and I thought that's a bit weird. And then it wasn't just a sort of gentle shake, it was quite serious, and I suddenly had about 2 seconds later I realised that it was an earthquake. My wife was in the shower, so we just literally just jumped into our clothes, and the information we usually get, I've read, tends to say stay in the flat, stay indoors. But I have to say instinct or something took over. We ran outside. A lot of the people that live in this block are expats from various parts of the world, and so there's a lot of people speaking English. So information was flying around. There are some Japanese people as well, and 2 or 3 of them who spoke to us said that it was the worst they'd ever felt. Then, just as they're saying that, an aftershock occurred, and it was very surreal and very, very unnerving, as you can imagine.
Okay. In that situation, just interrupt you for a second, Mark. In that situation, does one panic, or does the panic set in later, or were you totally cool with the whole thing?
No, I wasn't cool at all. Actually, there's a bit of an aftershock this second right now, actually, which is quite weird. Oh, yeah, there's a little aftershock. How bizarre.
Mark,
it's incredibly unnerving.
Mark,
I'd say that basically from the moment I woke up, the adrenaline's been pumping, because essentially whilst everyone's been very good and very sort of together and making real effort to support each other, it's a very, very strange thing when the Earth is essentially kind of shaking. Basically.
Okay. When that aftershock hit, 20 seconds ago now, 15 seconds ago,
Yep.
What does it feel like? Does the building move? Do you wobble? Do your innards wobble? What goes on?
You feel essentially, first of all, it's things like windows and glass. I mean, a lot of what I've done is I've put glasses out full of water in every room, just so I can see if it sounds a bit OCD, but basically just so I can see if a tremor's coming. Then you definitely feel, I suppose, doors shaking and things like curtains moving, and then the floor moves a little bit, and that's essentially when you know that it's an aftershock. At first you think it might be the wind. It's when the when essentially the ground is shaking, even if it's a flat floor or the ground outside, then you know.
No, understood. How much damage is there to where you live?
Very little. In fact, I couldn't see any palpable damage whatsoever. I mean, as I said, when we were outside, we all went to a local park. I couldn't see any damage whatsoever, but I could see quite a few people driving out. I saw one chap, a Japanese fellow, setting up a tent in the middle of the park with a crash helmet on and a small bag. Obviously, I just wondered if he knew something I didn't. So, yeah, it's very palpable. And as I said, whilst I wouldn't say it was all out-and-out panic, there's a very uneasy air. Just before I suppose about 2 hours ago, a Japanese neighbour came over to everyone in the block, apparently, and gave some advice about what to do in the event if it happens again. And so we've got a little emergency bag packed and so on. And, it's very unnerving.
Okay, Mark in Tokyo. Good to talk to you, Mark. Thanks very much. Let's talk to Patrick. He joins us on Skype from Tokyo as well. Patrick, I think I'm right in saying you were in your office when this hit.
Exactly. I was in the office when the earthquake struck, and I heard from the other experiences, and mine was a little bit different. I was around people here in the office, and first we looked at each other when it started to shake a little bit, and I was like, okay, another one of those small earthquakes. But then it became stronger and stronger, and then the first cries came from some of the people. And then, slowly I started realizing, okay, maybe it's a little bit stronger than the normal ones. But then it got stronger and stronger, and people started to go below the table. So I kind of didn't know exactly what's going on, but I joined them below the table. And below there I saw my coworker. She was below the table, and her face just she had this face that totally said, like, oh man, are we gonna die now? What's gonna happen? And we're in a pretty tall building, like 10 floors, and we're on the 5th floor. So I as well started thinking, like, man, can this building survive this earthquake if it becomes stronger? Are we gonna if it can't, then, well, we're not gonna survive. But I was happy that it didn't become too much stronger after that.
At what point during that initial 90 seconds or 2 minutes does one realize this is very, very big, this is very, very powerful?
Well, it was personally, I didn't really realize it that much, but basically the face of my coworker, that's what actually showed me, oh man, this is dangerous. And it was shaking really hard. It was it's kind of indescribable how it feels, but it's just like a really, really weird feeling. Like the world is shaking around you. It's kind of like worse than being on a boat that is out there in the waves being tossed around. It's kind of like that, maybe.
Okay, Patrick, I mean, the internet's obviously up and running. Skype is up and running. If you can stay with us, please do so. We've got texts and tweets coming in from Chad, Cyprus, Mauritius, and Chile as well. Drop us a text or an email. worldhaveyoursay@bbc.com is our email address, and you can get a re-rack of this program via the blog and the website. worldhaveyoursay.com is the blog. Let's talk to our Tokyo correspondent, Roland Burke. Roland, this is still an evolving situation. Bring us right up to speed.
Yes, what we're hearing is that in Sendai city, in Wakabayashi ward in that city, 200 to 300 bodies have been found by the police, who say that all 1,200 households there were hit by the tsunami. We're also hearing that one train derailed and contact with another train which was in a coastal area of Miyagi Prefecture around Sendai. Contact with that train has been lost. 300 homes washed away in Iwate Prefecture. And one report, this is just a sole report on Kyodo News, is saying that 88,000 people are missing. That's quoting the police. But that is, I should stress, just one report at the moment.
Okay, Roland, for the moment, thanks very much. You're sending us your texts and your tweets. Nicholas in Cyprus texted the program to say a truly tragic disaster, but a possible nuclear catastrophe looms, and that worries me. Monza in Chad texts to say my sympathy to all the people in Japan. And Camilla Polila tweets to say just a year ago in Chile, my country, she says, something happened that was similar. Has a geologist made a connection? That's something we were discussing just a little earlier here on BBC World News, asking various experts if there was a connection between what happened in New Zealand in January and what's going on in Japan now. Jeff is on the phone now. Jeff, just picking up on that point about what Nicholas in Cyprus calls a nuclear catastrophe. I think that's something that you're worried about because Japan has a lot of nuclear energy.
It does, and you have to question the wisdom of building and continuing to build more nuclear power stations in when the geology is so earthquake risk. And at the moment, I'm living in Tohoku in northern Japan, and only about 80 miles away from us, to the east, is Fukushima power station, which is one of the bigger nuclear power stations in the world. It's currently in a state of emergency because the cooling mechanism has failed, and it was built, not only is it in an earthquake area, but it's built right on the coast, on a coast that's notoriously susceptible to tsunamis. And I watched it being hit by the giant tsunami, and the situation is getting worse. There's now a 10-mile emergency area around the station that has been the power station that's been evacuated. So I'm sitting in my house with my 8-year-old son asleep upstairs, wondering whether we might need to evacuate at some point.
So you're obviously monitoring Japanese television and radio, so you can give us that particular bit of information. I mean, is the government, are the local, militia going in? What's going on?
Well, I think the usual procedures will have been happening in terms of emergency protocols and so on. But I think that an emergency, I think the television mentioned that emergency help has been sent from Tokyo, so specialists from outside the normal power station's staff itself are on their way, and the evacuations will be being handled by the emergency services around.
Thanks, Jeff. Good to talk to you.
Gather.
Okay, good luck. Let's talk to Caroline Hawley, our World Affairs correspondent again. That's a real worry for the authorities, Caroline. These nuclear power plants built in a tsunami area, built in an area now that's been on the receiving end of this huge earthquake.
That's absolutely right, and the authorities took the precaution of declaring what they called a nuclear state of emergency because of concerns about that one particular plant. But we are just hearing that the cooling system failure that prompted the government evacuation order for thousands of people living nearby is expected to have its system returned to normal soon. And that, of course, will be a major relief because one nuclear safety agency official was quoted earlier as saying that if the outage in the cooling system persisted, eventually radiation could leak out into the environment. The authorities have stressed that there have been no radiation leaks detected so far, but that obviously is a major concern, and certainly people have been very, very worried about that. And just one other thing to mention, there are now offers of help pouring in, and we are just hearing now that the Japanese military is getting ready some 300 planes and 40 ships to assist in the rescue operation. The UN has said it will do anything and everything that is needed to help.
Okay, Caroline, thanks very much. Also, you're getting in touch with us here at World Have Your Say from Peru, India, the Philippines, South Africa and Sri Lanka. Specifically, we understand lots of people contacting us here at the BBC World News Television, also our colleagues at BBC World Service Radio from India, asking if they are going to be okay. I'm assuming here that goes back to the Asian tsunami, of course, the Christmas, the Boxing Day tsunami that had such a devastating effect on all the countries surrounding the Indian Ocean. We're going to show you that map that we've been running for the past couple of hours or so here on BBC World News to give you a good sense of the countries that may yet be affected by this. And we'll also talk to Kate McGowan, who's our correspondent in Jakarta. Kate, what's the reaction where you are?
Well, fairly recently, the government has dropped the tsunami warning here in Indonesia, but it certainly was felt. I mean, in the northeast of the country, there were a series of small tsunami waves, about 0.5 meter in height. So we're not expecting huge amounts of damage from them, but there was certainly a huge amount of anxiety. I mean, you talk about the massive Asian tsunami that happened in 2004, and that's something that people here in Indonesia just haven't forgotten. It affected Indonesia more than any other country, and people still vividly remember the time when waves, they were 23 meters high, and they hit Aceh province on Boxing Day 2004. And obviously what happened today is nothing like the scale of that. But you just mentioned the word tsunami here, and that's what people think.
For the moment, Kate, thanks very much. You're watching World Have Your Say, coming to you live from the BBC here in London. More coverage, of course, on our website, bbc.com/news. Let's talk to Eddie again on Skype. We'll go to Eddie in just a second. We'll talk to Patrick as well. Patrick, just take me through what the mood is like. People don't seem particularly panicked, even though we've seen some astonishing pictures.
I kind of seem to not be that affected by how hard it was. I think most here in the office are taking it pretty easily. Like, we got evacuated after the big quake and went to the park, and now we're still here at the office after we returned, and we'll be staying here for the night because we couldn't get home with the trains. So we're kind of motivating each other, and kind of having a fun time together more than kind of worrying about what happened before. Of course, we're talking about it, but more chokingly talking about what happened.
Tell me, is anyone from the government or is anyone from the police force knocking on the door and saying, this is okay, you are okay for the next 12 or 18 hours? And are they telling you when they think things might begin to get back to normal, i.e., when do you go home?
Well, we hear all over the news what's going on and which trains are running. Again, there are several train lines already back up running, but those who are still at the office have train lines to use that are still not running. So, but in the news, we hear if there's a new a train running again.
Okay, Patrick, thank you very much for telling us what's going on with you right now. You can get the very latest as this story is put together by various BBC journalists, of course, for you from our website, bbc.com/news. I can tell you the Queen Elizabeth, has sent a message of sympathy to the Japanese Emperor following the earthquake and the tsunami, which is still moving. And also there have been at least another 5 powerful aftershocks. That's according to the US Geological Survey. Let's talk to Rianne, who's in Yokohama. She's on Skype. Rianne, what happened to you?
Hello. I actually was teaching a class here in Yokohama near Tsugamine Station, which is in Seiya Ward, and I have a class with about 4 women. And when the earthquake started, it was kind of a rocking back and forth, like a sway at first, which is pretty common. Whenever we have an earthquake here, it's just kind of a lateral shift that lasts for a few seconds, maybe a minute. So that is what happened, and we're all, oh goodness, look at this. And then it kept going, and then it started to be more like a, like a jerk feeling, and like a little bit of a bounce. And we were on a 2nd floor of an older building, of a church building. So that was when we decided to dive under the table. One woman opened a window, and I learned afterward that this is something that people in Japan learn to do in case of an emergency, of an earthquake, so that if something collapses, you can get at least to that window, hopefully. You know, it won't be locked, it won't be obstructed. If you're really stuck, you can call out. Someone might hear you through this window. So opening a door or a window is something that people are advised to do. I didn't know that. I learned that during, you know, an 8.9 earthquake today. But so someone did that, and then we were all under the table kind of holding hands, waiting it out. And I didn't look at the time. I wasn't really thinking about anything other than kind of surviving, because there was this very real sense of panic and confusion. So I think it was maybe 3 minutes of very intense shaking, 5 minutes total of just, you know, very of obviously being in an earthquake.
Okay. Okay, sorry just to interrupt you, Rihanna. I just want to get one point. We've been talking to people on Skype, like yourself, you know, who've been good enough to come onto World Have Your Say, and they've obviously, by definition, they've been in their apartments, they've been in their bedrooms, they've been sitting at their desks. As we've been talking to you, we've been playing this amazing footage of this wall of water and sludge coming in from the ocean. What is it like outside where you live?
Fortunately for the people here in Yokohama, we're south of there and also inland. It's a bay area, so there's absolutely no chance that we here would be affected by tsunami, only by the earthquake itself. So, you know, there's really no like shocking images like that here. However, the aftershocks where I am are pretty constant. Some of them have been substantial. We have like hanging lights in all the apartments here that just, you know, sway and sway and sway, and it's a little unnerving. You think, oh, is this another earthquake or is this an aftershock? You know, should I open that window? What should I do? So it's very uncomfortable right now, very scary, I think.
Okay, Rianne, thanks very much. Kamata in Zambia texts World Have You to say very sad and traumatic scenes we're seeing on the BBC World News Channel about the earthquake in Japan. Kamata says, we are from places where earthquakes are surreal. He can only say his thoughts are with the grieving, good-natured people of that great nation of Japan. Sathya in Malaysia texts to say, my heart goes out to all those who've lost their loved ones in the earthquake in Japan. Ryan is in Hawaii. Ryan, what are they expecting in Hawaii?
Well, we're pretty much on the closing end of the first large series of waves coming through. The last hour and a half has basically been trying to measure the changes in sea level and the surf coming in and coming out. I mean, maybe about half an hour ago, the water receded about 100 yards off Diamond Head. Basically, it seemed like the island got a little bigger. And but fortunately, when the water came back in from the various harbors around the state, we haven't really been seeing a lot of damage. Maybe a dock breaking loose, maybe some fish ending up in a parking lot, but nothing serious or major.
Because that's one of the standard things, is it not? When a tsunami or an earthquake is about to hit, the sea goes away, but the worry is what it will do when it comes back. Exactly. But we're fairly well trained. We've had some very major tsunamis in the history of our state, certainly wounds that are still fresh for a lot of us. So we're pretty well prepared. They have a statewide siren system that goes off. It sounds like an air raid siren that goes off across the entire island chain. And they were setting it off every hour, starting at about 10 p.m., right around when I was hoping my kids would be able to sleep. But, basically calling attention to everybody to turn on the news and see what's going on. If you had to evacuate, could you? Yeah, if you had to, like your previous caller, I'm fortunate here in Hawaii as well. We're very cognizant of tsunamis, but where I live is right in the middle of the island. So actually, where I was where a lot of people were ending up when they were leaving the shorelines, and either trying to get someplace safe where they can meet with family or go get some supplies. I tried to run down to Walmart to get some water and supplies, but they were wiped out before I even got there. Okay. We heard a lot in the aftermath of the Asian tsunami about the early warning system, and then they were going to put it in, and then it didn't work properly. But you seem to be saying to us that your early warning system, apart from the colossal media coverage, of course, that's kicked in over the past, 6 hours or so, you're saying your early warning system would have alerted you to this anyway? Yes, I would say our early warning system is fairly mature and definitely seemed to function well. There's been
nonstop live coverage on our local stations. I will say that coverage on Twitter by individual citizens reporting the status and the conditions where they're at was really fantastic. But the Indian Ocean tsunami, they didn't have a system there like we have here, and that's something that our tsunami specialists are trying to help them develop. But as far as for us here in Honolulu, we definitely benefit from that system.
Okay, Ryan in Hawaii, thanks very much. Alice in Tokyo posts on Facebook to say, watching World Have Your Say live from Tokyo, aftershocks keep happening. It's scary. Fukushima nuclear plant is a worry. That goes back to what Jeff was saying a little earlier. He lives quite close to one of Japan's nuclear power plants, and he was telling us that local Japanese television is saying that there is, in effect, a 10-mile exclusion zone has been imposed around that installation. Ken is on Skype in Tokyo. Ken, what's happening there right now?
Well, we're having quite a few tremors every now and again, but yeah, but other than that, I think the city's seems kind of normal.
You've just had, when you say normal, Ken, you've just had the biggest earthquake since records began, since instrument records began.
Yes.
Can you define normal for me a little bit more, perhaps?
Sorry.
Why are people
you're kind of...
I'm coming and going, I suspect. Skype does that sometimes. Why are people reacting in the way that they are? We were hearing from one of our contributors a little earlier talking about people who were in the railway station, and they started tweeting about this.
Yes. Well, you know, people are kind of stuck at all these big stations and so forth, but the some of the tubes resumed the service, and some people are sort of managed to get home and everything. So things are slowly going back to normal, except these little tremors we're having like every 3 minutes.
Okay. Are you worried there's going to be another big one?
Well, yeah, kind of, I suppose. You know, it's always a possibility, but, you know, I hope not.
Okay, Ken, thanks very much. Let's talk to Natsuki, who's in the east of Tokyo. Natsuki, I think I'm right in saying you were one of our few callers and emailers and people coming on Skype today to tell us that you were actually outside a building when this hit.
Yes, I was in front of the door of the building and waiting for my meeting with my client, and suddenly the earthquake happened. And first I thought it was just a short one, as usual, just 1 minute or something, but it lasted more than 5 minutes, and so many people evacuated the building. But we swiftly moved to the car park, and it was amazing escape from the building.
Are you anticipating another earthquake, not just aftershocks, but another full-on earthquake?
Because since I was a child, I have been told that a huge one would hit Tokyo. I mean, the earthquake happens near Tokyo, but this one was huge. But this one happened in the northeastern Japan. So I think there might be a huge one near Tokyo, and this might be more severe and serious to the people in Tokyo.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Natsuki. Good to talk to you. You're getting in touch with us here at World Have Your Say from even more countries, Brunei, Barbados, Bangladesh, and Samoa. A couple of comments as well going through to the blog, worldhaveyoursay@bbc.com. Carolina in Poland posts to say, I was eating breakfast a few minutes after 7 a.m. when I saw it on TV. I had no words. Alice in Tokyo posts on Facebook to say she's watching World Have Your Say live. Let's talk to John Temple, who joins us on the line now as well. John, where are you and what's going on with you?
I'm in Honolulu, Hawaii, in the newsroom of civilbeat.com, where I'm the editor. We're an online news service serving Honolulu and Hawaii, and we're following the tsunami as it affects the Hawaiian Islands.
There is talk, John, of the wave or waves being higher than some of the islands that might be in the path of the waves. Is that something that you're anticipating, or is that worry kind of going away now?
I think that worry is going away now. I think what we're seeing is this is an island state, and it's very, very connected to the ocean, and these are really water people here. And this was a huge concern, what we were seeing in seeing the pictures from Japan were devastating, and you see the power of a tsunami. So people were much more concerned this time than previous tsunami warnings. And but what we've seen is it's still dark here. Dawn has not come, so we won't know for sure. But it appears that certainly on Oahu, the island where Honolulu is located, doesn't appear to be any damage. And it does appear that on Maui that there is some damage. The extent is not known, but certainly we don't have a sense of panic or great anxiety at this point.
Okay, historically, John, share with us the tsunamis that have affected where you are. Have they come from the west or have they come from the south of you?
No, I think they've come from the west, but there's been so many, and really we haven't had a really terrible experience for more than 50 years. So it's not really in the living memory of most people in Hawaii, and it's also important to remember that the population was so much smaller and the whole development here was so much smaller. I mean, this is a major tourist center today. There are, more than 100,000, certainly, possibly as many as 200,000 visitors to the islands who have no experience with a tsunami or they're away from home, so it's a different experience for them. And so it's a different place than when roughly 50 years ago, 60 years ago, many people died, and people here are aware of the severe danger. And of course, many homes and buildings are in the path of a tsunami. And I myself had to leave my apartment. I did not feel, I was in the evacuation zone, living right near the beach or on the beach and close to Waikiki.
Okay, John, thank you very much. Good to talk to you. People from 45 countries worldwide have got in touch with this program, World Have Your Say. You can do the same thing. Drop us a text on +44 7786 20 60 80 or give us a call on +44 207 083 7272. Contact details on the website worldhaveyoursay.com. The World Nuclear Association saying it understands the cooling situation, quote, the cooling situation at the Fukushima nuclear plant is under control. You will be aware, doubtless, if you've been with us through the past few hours here on BBC World News, that there are genuine worries and concerns about what happens to Japan's nuclear power plants. A lot of them have been shut down for completely obvious reasons. Ali works at the Venice Beach Hotel in Venice Beach in Los Angeles. Ali, lovely part of the world. What are people saying about this where you are?
Just the same as everyone else. Our thoughts are with those who were tragically, injured and killed in Japan. We're getting all basically the pictures that you guys are getting here, thanks to the incredible service on your website. I was working here doing the overnight shift in LA, and between about 2 or 3 o'clock when the news filtered through about what had happened in Japan. And then, of course, a couple of hours later, we were seeing the effects of everything else with the tsunami, which was going to be, possibly affecting places like Indonesia, New Zealand, even I think you mentioned Hawaii as well. And there was a bit of panic here as well. So I don't know. At one point, communications were pretty bad as well. So we were a bit in the dark. But it seems everything at the moment, according to the latest news, it seems that we should be okay here in the States. But at one point, there was a bit of panic here as well.
Okay, Ali, when you talk about panic, what's the mood or the tone of the local broadcasts?
The local broadcasts were basically saying, prepare yourself as well, because I think in the other state of Oregon, there was news that some of the, I think it was across the state of Oregon, it was just saying that possibly people were starting to evacuate, schools and buildings and moving elsewhere to inner parts of the actual cities where, to try and get away from the coast. But nothing was said here in California or mentioned about doing anything. But at the moment, it's pretty quiet here, so we're still waiting on news as well.
Okay, Ali at the Venice Beach Hotel, just near Los Angeles Airport, I suspect. Thanks very much. Good to talk to you. Joe Burke joins us. He's the morning news host at KALW in San Francisco. Joe, just walk me through what your radio station's saying about this.
Well, we received notification this morning from the National Alert System. The notification came about 1:06 California time and will be in effect. It's notification of a tsunami warning until about 8:36 this morning, when it's expected to come to the west coast here in California, and up, I imagine, in Canada and towards Alaska as well.
Okay. Is this something that people up and down that coast, in a sense, not have been waiting for, not have been panicking about, but it's been something that there has been, particularly since the Asian tsunami, a growing awareness of?
Yes, I grew up out in the neighborhood in San Francisco that's right on the beach. The Great Highway is what we call the roadway that runs along the coast. And in the last couple of years since the situation you mentioned, there have been tsunami warning signs, permanent signs put up in that neighborhood that tell people that if, in fact, you hear about a tsunami, you should get to higher ground because there is a danger of some water, rising water and higher tides and that sort of thing. So it's more a part of everyone's life now than it was 20, 30 years ago when I was living in that neighborhood as a kid.
If one drives the big sewer road from San Francisco to LA, you get a real up close and personal feeling for how strong the ocean currents can be. And that's even before you start talking about a wave crossing the Pacific and slamming into that west coast.
Yeah, that's true. It's an amazingly beautiful part of the world to sit up on a cliff and watch the waves roll in. But I was speaking, if I may change just a moment, to a cousin of mine who lives in Hawaii, and they were having the effects happen to them in the middle of the night, which would seem to be rather scary because you really can't see what's coming. But he said that in Hawaii, the waves were 2 to 6 feet higher than usual, but they didn't have the large surge that we saw on many of the clips that is just devastating parts of Japan right now.
Sum up for me, if you can, Joe, how people will feel about what's going on in Japan, because up and down, I mean, particularly in San Francisco, there's a large Japanese community as well.
Yes, there is, and hopefully we'll be able to help in whatever way we can, by sending help to the Red Cross or other international aid agencies to give those folks a hand. Because what I'm seeing on videos on YouTube and on the television is just absolute devastation. You've got industrial-sized buildings and cars and trucks and boats in the tsunami wave itself, and they're just washing over this farmland and absolutely ruining it.
Okay, good to talk to you, Joe. Just one last final thought. I mean, when it comes to extending that well-known American helping hand, America will be there, I'm sure.
Oh, of course. That's without a doubt. I'm sure the president will do something in the next couple of hours to announce our intention to help out.
Thanks very much. Joe Burke here with that local radio station in San Francisco. We're getting contact from people in 48 countries contacting us here at World Have Your Say. Our blog, of course, worldhaveyoursay.com. You can drop us an email. That's worldhaveyoursay@bbc.com, or drop us a text on +44 7786 20 60 80. We've got a text from Samoa. It's 5:30 in the morning and all seems okay here. And also Zivikom Borero in Zimbabwe texts to say, I want to extend my sympathy to Japan. Going back to the events, because these events are still very much unfolding, of course, in Japan, we have one report from the AFP-WHYS service saying that a dam has broken in the northeast of Japan. It is leaking water and it has washed away various homes as well. People are getting in touch from South Korea, Zimbabwe, Cameroon and Kuwait. Let's just show you that map to give you a real sense of where we think the tsunami might be headed next. And we'll also go back to Yukiko, who was talking to us a little earlier here on World Have Your Say. Yukiko, I mean, one of the aspects that's come out of our discussion in this hour of World Have Your Say has been not the bravery, but the way that people have almost underreacted to what's happened.
Underreact to what do you mean? So
they have not panicked. They have not gone into a frenzy and started running down the road.
Many people ran out of the building, and I did too. I did run out of my house because it was shaking really badly, and I thought maybe I didn't want to be locked up in my house. So I jumped out of the building. And there are aftershocks every few minutes, so it's very, very scary. But the big one, as far as Tokyo is concerned, there was one big one shortly before 3 o'clock, and there was another one like half an hour later. But so far, after that, there are aftershocks, and it's very scary. But the tremor themselves are very minor.
Okay. How worried are you about the nuclear power plants that your country has?
Oh, that's another very, very scary aspect of the event. And so we don't really know what's going on. And the government are saying, they're just, taking precautions. And then that one of the reactors and that some cooling water is not running all right. And they need to change the like some battery or something. I don't know. But anyway, that's a very scary aspect, and we need to watch it very carefully.
Okay, Yukiko, good luck. Thank you very much for talking to us here on World Have Your Say. People from 53 countries have got in touch with us here at World Have Your Say, sharing their thoughts, their feelings with specifically what's happened in Japan since that earthquake struck. And also we've touched on the idea that the tsunami is now heading from the west to the east. Gray in Tokyo has emailed the BBC to say a crowded cinema rolled like an ocean liner and nobody screamed. We're back with another edition of this programme a little bit later here on BBC World News. We'll keep you right across what's going on in Japan and across the wider Pacific area. That later edition of World Have Your Say is on at 19:30 GMT. And you can keep right across all the developments, of course, on our website, bbc.com/news. Drop us an email, worldhaveyoursay@bbc.com. We'll wrap up this special edition of World Have Your Say with some of the images of what's been going on in Japan in the past few hours. From me, Peter Dobby, and everyone on the team here at Television Centre in London, thanks for watching. Do stay with us here on BBC World News.